Harry's wife. No more archetypes. World rejoices. Yes, the noise that you would anticipate to be heard when I would enter the room, but is actually the noise of people rejoicing, because it has been announced that there will be no more archetypes. You will recall that Archetypes was a clusterfuck of a podcast that took place last year, a transparent attempt by Harry's wife to settle scores, where each episode was dedicated to the discussion of undoubtedly a word or a phrase or a concept that had been applied to Harry's wife at some juncture. She had then railed against that because it offended her sense of control. At the time, she would have squawked to anybody who would listen to suggest, I'm not a diva. But now, with a platform, she was able to revisit those slights and seek to slay them. She, of course, did so in her usual way of layering on the industrial beige, talking about the topic in a fashion with that stupid, breathy voice that she had adopted, which was completely different from the voice that she had used in the past. People could not get past the way that she talked so much about herself and made it about her once again. Hilariously, where Mariah Carey, as a situation of Narcissus Collide, called her out as being a diva, she essentially had to sneak back into the studio at a later juncture to explain when she called me a diva, she called me a diva in the good sense, not the bad sense. Once again, nullifying the threat to control that had been posed by what Mariah Carey had said. The whole series was regularly ridiculed in the press, particularly by Hilary Rose of The Times. It started off high in the charts, mainly because people wanted to listen to find out how poor it was, as opposed to being genuinely interested. And of course, it soon slid into obscurity. Notwithstanding the fact that other people tried to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and it was actually their hard work that Harry's wife had commandeered, the problem is that when you take an unpopular individual who is boring and has nothing really of interest to say, that chooses sanctimonious woke topics, it really is a recipe for a disaster. Even the Sugars probably didn't listen for long because it will have used too many long words which they would have struggled to comprehend. It was not, by any measure, a success. The Daily Mail has reported that Harry's Wife's Archetypes podcast is axed by Spotify. Streaming platform and Sussexes agree to part ways, with royal pair set to lose full payout due to low productivity. A couple of things before we get into the meat of the article. One suspects that it is PR spin to suggest that they've agreed to part ways. If you think about it logically, Harry's wife has a platform with Spotify, which is probably the world's most well-known streaming service. She's not going to let that go. It's a residual benefit. It also will provide her with money, one of her favourite residual benefits. So again, she's not going to let that go. They haven't really pressured her into doing too much work, which again suits the laziness that comes associated with her. Therefore, evidentially and logically, there is no basis for her to say, do you know what, I agree that we should part ways. Instead, it's clear Spotify have thought, we've overpaid you, we're also struggling as a consequence of overpayments generally. That's why they've been making people redundant. Thirdly, your series was crap. It was boring, it was dull, and it did not hit the spot as we intended it to do so. We wanted more gossip about royal life, and all you did was go on a woke crusade to settle scores. And therefore, unsurprisingly to the rest of us, but perhaps a surprise to Spotify, they didn't get what they thought they were going to get with her. And heads have rolled. And someone, somewhere, has sensibly decided, enough, let's call time on this. But for the purposes of PR spinnery, and of course demanded by Harry's wife's narcissism, it has to be portrayed as her decision, as agreeing to part ways. Furthermore, the fact that they're going to lose full payout due to low productivity is not a surprise. Harry isn't really interested in all of this stuff. It shows because what has he created? Nothing. He's just been dragged along by his pink pods, by Harry's wife when they did the Shitflix docuseries, and also he popped up a couple of times on the Spotify series. He probably wants to gain the privacy that has been talked about, aside from the personal crusades that he's embarked upon, wound up by his wife. It's her, because of her narcissism, that requires the prominence and the need to assert control and to draw the fuel, etc. But she's essentially lazy and talentless. So the problem that she has is that she's not inspiring enough or decent enough to cause people to think, well, we will create loads of brilliant content and you can just commandeer it and pass it off as your own. As recently, one of the producers spoke out saying that she did the heavy lifting and not Harry's wife. Why do people speak out about that? Because they don't like Harry's wife and the way that she treats them. Her narcissism has not evolved highly enough to enable to management of a facade all of the time. And she gets on people's backs. She bullies them. She intimidates them. She devalues them behind those closed doors, which erodes any sense of loyalty that they would have towards her. Lacking talent and lacking application, 1 hour a week with regard to Archewell, means that she's content to take the money, but doesn't want to deliver. Typical of many narcissists, showing that sense of entitlement in terms of pay me, and I'll get around to doing something in due course. The Mail reports Harry's wife's Spotify podcast, Arsey Wipes, will not be renewed for a second season as the audio company begins to make changes and revamp its output. It has been confirmed. The streaming giant and Harry's wife and Harry's audio production company, Archewell Audio, released a joint statement on Thursday night saying they have mutually agreed to part ways and are proud of the series we made together. Harry's wife and her husband Harry reportedly signed a $20 million deal with Spotify for the project in late 2020, but insiders close to the audio giant claim that the royal couple did not meet the productivity benchmark required to receive the full payout, the Wall Street Journal reported. The move to ditch the Duchess of Sussex's show, which explores the labels that try to hold women back, follows discussions months ago about renewing it for a second series. The determined Duchess, however, is still planning to create more podcasts. Of course she will, because she believes that she's got something of interest to say, and find a new home for her series that has previously featured her friend and tennis star Serena Williams, pop sensation Mariah Carey, and South African comedian Trevor Noah. The axing of the show comes after sources close to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex claimed the pair would stop making tell-all Netflix documentaries, publishing memoirs, and sitting down for interviews that bash the royal family as they have nothing left to say. Spotify was said to carry out conversations for a second series of Archetypes earlier on in the year, following the end of the first season, but the conversations later stalled. The talent agency that recently signed Harry's wife, WME, told the Wall Street Journal the team behind Archetypes remain proud of the podcast they created at Spotify. Harry's wife is continuing to develop more content for the Archetypes audience on another platform. It comes as Spotify announced it will be laying off around 200 staff members, around 2% of their workforce, who work within their podcast teams. It cited difficulties in making podcasts profitable, despite its popularity among listeners. Harry's wife signed off her 12th episode in the Archetypes podcast series with a defiant piece of poetry about survival, but made no mention of a potential second series. Discussions to publish more content from Archewell, the production company owned by the royal company, are ongoing, the paper reported. And then once again it resurrects. There are also suggestions that Harry's wife could soon look to bring her wellness and lifestyle blog, The Tig, in a bid to rival Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop website, which is reportedly worth £200 million. How many times have we heard that? The axing of this will have challenged Harry's wife's need for control considerably. It's another blow towards her status that Spotify don't want to continue the relationship. Naturally, her response to that is to say, we've got lots more to create and we'll go and find another platform. But they may well struggle. After all, anybody that has any nous will look at it and say, it was boring, it was bland, it was not particularly successful. Why would we want to take this on? Given that we're not going to get any gossip about the royal family, that vein seems to have been exhausted, and she's a talentless, bland individual, so what is she going to meaningfully tell us about anything else? If she was a skilled presenter who was very good at questioning her guests and drawing information out of them in a humorous and entertaining way, she would provide some value. But she's not, because she's not interested in her guests. She's only interested in herself. Accordingly, whilst many people are delighted that there'll be no more Archetypes, at least through Spotify, for Harry's wife, this is a further wounding for her, and of course its reportage thereafter creates repeated challenges for her. It simply is not getting any better for her. I'm H.D. Tudor. Thank you for listening.